that's what the gold people do, right? Because they can't carry 12 words. So it's almost certain you could say that if you're a gold bug, you know, at some point, if you think that gold is the way to do it, you're gonna have to put gold in your ass. There's really no way. Like, you're essentially like just saying to everybody, "I'm into gold in my ass." There is no way out.
This is the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast, a show where average Joe firefighters explore the most important monetary technology of the 21st century. We talk Bitcoin, we talk finance, and we talk shit.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us here again at the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast. Today we are talking to NVK, co-founder and CEO of Coinkite. NVK has been in the space for over a decade and founded Coinkite in 2013. He may actually be Satoshi. It's always a pleasure to speak to NVK. He has a great sense of humor and he didn't disappoint in this outing. Coinkite has been busy churning new devices out of their Cypherpunk Skunkworks lately. We talk about Coinkite's new offerings, the Coldcard Mark IV, the SatsCard, and the Tapsigner. We also talk about Opendime suppositories, the Canadian truckers and the Trudeau response, gold and dollars as shitcoins, and feeding chickens with the Lightning Network. You can follow us on Twitter at blue_collarbtc or send us an email at bluecollarbitcoinpodcast@gmail.com. If you like, you can send us a tip via Lightning on Twitter, or you could try Podcasting 2.0 and stream sats our way on Breeze or Fountain. The Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast is sponsored by Coinkite, makers of the Coldcard, the SatsCard, the Tapsigner, the BlockClock, and still in R&D, the Opendime suppository with gently tapered edges. We have used Coldcard for deep cold storage for years, and we have recommended their products long before being sponsored by them. Taking custody of your Bitcoin is a serious responsibility. If you're going to take this step, and you should, then get yourself the best hardware wallet the industry has to offer. Get a Coldcard. Use code BCB to get 5% off the Mark III version, or order the Mark IV, and for a limited time, get it at a discounted price. Enjoy the show.
All views and language expressed by the hosts and guests in this podcast are solely their personal opinions and do not reflect their employers or organizations they are associated with. Do not treat any of the content in this podcast as investment advice or as an inducement to follow a particular strategy. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
NVK, how's your morning?
Good, guys. I keep on going to conferences trying to catch COVID, but I just keep on catching normal colds.
You just can't
As
get
you
it
can
yet,
tell
huh?
by my nasal voice today.
What is the normal routine for you in the morning? What does NVK do when he rolls out of bed?
Well, I don't roll out of bed. I just hear, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," very early in the morning.
They come and jump on you?
Exactly.
Yep.
And then go downstairs, make coffee.
What's your brew lately? What do you brew up in the morning?
Oh man, it's just like I go for the mid-grade, low low roast, so like medium light roast. Toss it in the automated coffee machine, press a button.
Nice. Yeah, the Firehouse, we joke a lot about the gas station swill that we drink at the Firehouse. It's basically the cheapest bargain barrel bottom
Oh, I can't
Folgers.
fucking do that, man.
And people put a cup and a half in there, so it's like motor oil. But you know what? You drink it when it's the only thing available.
It's part of being a firefighter. I remember a couple of years ago, someone was suggesting we have this general fund that we put into, everybody throws cash in and that's where our coffee comes from. And someone was like, let's up the ante. Let's do Starbucks, grounds. And one of our lieutenants was like, fuck no. Part of being a fireman is drinking shitty coffee. And it's true.
Dude, that's hilarious. And coffee prices going up with inflation a lot too. It's very expensive.
It is.
Some hunting camps, they will have like a tin of Maxwell that's like 5 years old. You have a sip of that in the morning. You're like, nope, I'm quitting coffee.
That's like the equivalent of Natty Light beer in the world of beer. That's just total garbage.
You just got back from Tejas, right?
That's right.
Tell us about it.
Is the land of Bitcoin now, man. They are really, really building something there. Did not have to bump into a single shitcoiner. That was nice.
Wow.
And
They're running them out of town.
Yeah. What?
They're running the shitcoiners out of town down there.
Probably, man. I don't know what they do in taxes to these guys, but I didn't see a single one.
What did you do? Walk us through your week down there.
Yeah, so the guys from Unchained, so Parker, there is South by Southwest there, right? Which is like woke hell essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And and there is some good music too. Gotta give it to them. And it's just like very sort of like specific conference that's been happening there for like over a decade, right? So what the guys from Unchained did is they ran a parallel 1 week sort of like events going on there at the same time. So essentially like the town was packed, but then there's like bit devs with like 200 people in it, and then there is like this other event called Bitcoin Takeover the other day, and a bunch of other events. Like it was interesting. It was nice. We had like essentially things from 10 a.m. to like 2 a.m. every day there for a week.
I don't know if you guys saw Peter McCormick talking shit about Texas barbecue on Twitter the other day. Did you you agree? I mean, I think he's basically saying that barbecue in Texas is not nearly as good as everyone pretends it is.
Well, so here's the thing. I personally don't take my barbecue advice from British people.
Right.
I mean, that's just a starter right there. There is many kinds of barbecue in Texas, right? And there is many kinds of barbecuers in Texas. I found that like even like the mediocre sort of like corporate-y thing was like decent. There is some great barbecue. There's some fantastic steak. There was like a nice little a steak cooked by Bitcoiners there too. That was great. I actually went to the ranch to buy the meat.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You throw some incredible meat porn up on Twitter. What is your favorite cut? Like if you're like, all right, I can only have this cut for the rest of my life.
I'm not a man of favorites. Like I it's just I like them all, but like, picanha is a good one. Skirt steak is another good one. Center cut. There's nobody hates ribeye.
Nobody.
Nobody.
You're a terrorist if you hate ribeyes.
Probably.
I'm going straight to the butcher shop when we're done with this.
Yeah, man. See if they have skirt steak. Seriously. It's so underappreciated. It's the diaphragm like strip of muscles. And some of them can be gamier, so it's an acquired taste, but it's really good.
So you guys at Coinkite have a bunch of new products that we would like to talk about. Maybe just because I think a lot of people might have confusion between the SatsCard and the Tapsigner. So maybe we could start there. Could you give us a quick explanation of like what needs these are trying to meet, what differentiates them, and how they work?
Sure. So what we have is if you go to coinkite.cards, we created a new domain for that. It shows you both there. So SatsCard is essentially the evolution of Opendime, right? It's a little card, NFC, you tap, you fill it up with Bitcoin, and then you actually have 9 more reuses of the card. Okay? So it's that simple, really. Just SatsCard is an Opendime. People know Opendime.
Right. A more accessible
and it's much
Opendime,
less expensive,
though, right?
which
in a
is,
lot of ways, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can use it 10 times, and people in the third world that would want something like an Opendime probably maybe not worth their expense because they are getting to be, I think they were $60 for 3 of them at this point, and I'm sure inflation is impacting you guys, and you just have to make things more expensive.
I think we just bump up the price actually on the normal ones. On the Opendimes, yeah. The problem with Opendime is that like we're still trapped on a couple chips that we use that are not the most common anymore. So we can get inventory and stuff, but the price just keeps on going up. And because we're starting with SatsCard now, we're sort of like not eating that margin loss anymore. We're just sort of slowly upping the price. SatsCard is a lot more reasonable. It's a single chip, right? There's just one chip inside that card and an antenna, and then hopefully we can do 2 things, right? One is maintain price if inflation goes to the moon, and 2, lower price as our scale grow, which is kind of nice. It was not possible with Opendime. And then Tapsigner, right? Similar package, right? Just a card, NFC card. But Tapsigner is essentially a hardware wallet. But it's like a dumb, ultra smart hardware wallet. We taught the smart card how to understand Bitcoin. And what that makes, it's like now essentially you have a Bitcoin blind signer. It doesn't know what's signing, right? So it's a different set of trade-off for security, right? It's not Coldcard. It's not for your cold deep storage. But what it does is make it super easy for you to sign or co-sign, like say phone wallets. So, or hopefully soon even some Lightning stuff. So essentially, let's say you want to, instead of having, I don't know, like $100 on Blue Wallet, you want to have a couple $1,000 there, right? But now you're a little bit more sort of, I don't feel like having my private key on the phone, right? So what you can do is you can have your Tapsigner be your private key, essentially, right? And you can just tap Blue Wallet once Blue Wallet integrates to sign a transaction. Or say, Unchained, Casa, or Green Wallet, or something like that. One of these multi-sig wallets. You're going to be able to essentially tap to co-sign a transaction.
Yeah, that's one of the first applications I thought of for this thing. It's just that usability in these multi-sig setups that are becoming more ubiquitous.
Would you feel comfortable using that in conjunction with a couple of hardware wallets for like a cold storage type multi-sig, or would you not feel comfortable using that?
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole point.
Okay.
So we have an ELAC 6 chip on this card. That's like one of the highest security ratings that you can get for a smart card. It's pretty up there. I think Ledger is the same. And so like it's really secure. What I don't trust is that there's a lot of closed stuff in the smart cards, right? The chip and like lots of little closed things, right? So I don't want to trust as a single point of failure for real money, right? I mean, it's extremely unlikely there is a problem, right? Extremely unlikely there's like some backdoor or something, but different set of trade-off, right? So I think for multi-sig is perfectly fine. It's actually a great device to sort of like use as a backup key, for example, where you go and you throw that in your safe deposit box as one of the multi-sig, because these cards are fairly resilient and the chip is not exposed. It's like inside the plastic. So it should last a very long time. It does burn.
Yeah.
So watch out for fires. But
what about Mark IV? Give us some updates on exactly what this is going to roll out and what upgrades are going to exist.
Yeah, so Mark IV, we started shipping dev units, right? Because we can't update the boot ROM in the field. So we want to test out the boot ROM with like many people who are using for like alpha purposes, right? Not using for real money. And then once we get like the go ahead from enough people, we'll start shipping them. They are like essentially in production now. So the hardware is all set. It's really a matter of like getting the firmware, the bootloader part of the firmware, right, which is the non-changeable part. Like, in a point where we're comfortable. We like to test things before people put money on them.
Yeah.
There was somebody on Twitter the other day, NVK, and they were, assessing the pros and cons of Ledger versus Coldcard, and they said, one of the main benefits to Ledger is it's better for anal storage. And I responded and I said, speak for yourself. There's a wide swath of opinion about what you may prefer to put up your sphincter or not, but the convo got super weird. I mean, it was fun and games for a while, and then somebody responded. I forget what exactly the picture was. I looked away pretty quick.
I
think it was a hollowed out dildo with an Opendime in it.
It was a butt plug.
Yeah, I saw that. It was
butt plug.
It's a butt plug.
Yep.
It's a butt plug. There was a guy who makes butt plugs with Opendimes in them.
Wait. So he sells them that way? That's like intended purpose.
I think so. I think there was like a whole industry around it. It gets tricky, because we want to like echo and sort of like
NVK, how's your morning?
Broadcast things that people do with our products, but sometimes it can get a little much.
A little much.
Just for the corporate account. I mean, props to you. If this is how you guys want to use the product, you know what? Like,
you should do like a Coldcard narrow version.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Something with a taper on it.
Okay. I mean, Coldcard does have round corners. They're not very rounded, but they are rounded.
Yeah, and you guys cover.
You
it
could
with
remember
that bit of
12
lacquer.
words. One option is remember 12 words. Some other people, when they cross borders, like to do something else. Hey, to each his own.
Yeah.
But you will show up on X-ray, right?
I'm sure there's some percentage of people that just feel better having something in their rectum when they're crossing a border. Even I can remember 12 words, but I still want to shove something up my ass.
That's what the gold people do, right? Because they can't carry 12 words. So it's almost certain you could say that if you're a gold bug, at some point, if you think that gold is the way to do it, you're gonna have to put gold in your ass. There's really no way. You're essentially just saying to everybody, "I'm into gold in my ass." There is no way out.
You better melt this down into the shape of a dildo. I'll tell you.
The last time we spoke about the guy who shoved that gold in his ass, the Indian guy at the airport. I'm pretty sure we spoke to you. How does this just keep coming around?
Was that the first NVK episode?
I think it might have been.
I forgot that.
I think it was.
Wow, full circle.
Gold people in their butts, man. It's just it's just fate.
Yeah, you're right.
And in the price too. I mean, they just keep on taking it in the butt
for 10 years. 10 years, those poor bastards.
It's more than 10, man. It's just like the gold price,
man, I've got the giggles.
I'm gonna need to get a domain for this. Gold guys just like it in the butt.
We'll go joint with you on that. It's a new blue collar Bitcoin Coinkite venture.
Some derivative of gold digger, with a different connotation there.
He only gets better, doesn't it? This meme is just really going to drive it home.
A question that I have for you that I think a lot of people, when they hear the new Coldcard has NFC capability, I think the first thing people think is like, how is that a security loophole? How is that an issue? Can you explain to us? We don't really know shit about NFC, how that tech works. How worried should someone be about that possibility of that leaking information? Just explain that tech to us and how it works.
Yeah. So I'm not very concerned because a few things, right? So NFC is a radio, right? So, if the NSA is after you, they can probably come up with some way of reading that radio from next door, right? But if the NSA is after you, man, you have bigger problems.
Right. You are in trouble.
I mean, they're probably watching on your phone anyways. So aside from this extreme sort of attackers, it's like you really need to be touching the two devices together because you need to create a field, right? And this field is sort of like what powers it, and sort of so you need to be very close. The second thing is you can disable it. It comes disabled. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now let's say you don't want to trust that it was disabled. You can actually scratch a little part of the PCB near the SD card. We're going to teach people how. And then it's dead. You can't turn it on anymore, the NFC feature.
Cool. That's a cool feature.
So personally, for my cold needs, I'm going to scratch them all.
Okay.
That's just my shtick, right? I like that peace of mind. But now, QRs are not too far from the same consequences as well, right? Because you could have a camera that's looking at it. You could have a remote attacker access your phone, using the phone, the computer, and looking at those as well.
Yeah.
And then there's the complex libraries and the complex hardware for that to exist as well. So, trade-offs and usability.
Yeah. So if you had let's say the Tapsigner, and you forgot to put it in its RF protected pocket so that the frequency can't escape or no one could. What is it that somebody who had evil intent, what could they collect from it if you didn't have it inside of its RF case?
Right. So this actually happens a lot, right? Especially in Europe. You have pickpocketers that were sort of tapping people's butts because of their credit cards.
Yeah.
To sign essentially money. So a lot of wallets, by the way, now have actually RF protection. But let's say you don't have it all, right? Like you were saying. So what they could do is they can just get information about the card, right? Like kind of like XPub kind of thing. Not really the XPub. You'd be more like yeah, I don't think they'll get much because they will have to try to sign something. Because essentially what we do is we have a pin, right?
Mhm.
So the wallet, the card is going to ask for the pin before it signs anything, right? Or before it releases any other kind of information.
Right.
So I think the worst that could happen is they could get the card ID, which not really is not related to Bitcoin. Is really like whatever, right?
Right.
It's not a nice thing to lose things, but it's not a big deal. Yeah, and you can change that pin too. It comes with a pin, but you can change it. So essentially, it's similar to credit cards, right? So essentially, you have CVC, which is a customer verification code, right? So it's essentially proof of presence. So you have to have the touch happen, and also that pin, meaning you have true possession of the card, right?
Gotcha. All right. So it sounds like it's not really much of a loss if anyone got any of that kind of information. They're not getting an XPub. They're certainly not getting the keys.
No.
So there's no real worry there.
With SatsCard, they can get the Bitcoin address.
Okay.
Oh, once with SatsCard. Yeah.
Yes. They can't spend it, but they can get because the idea is if you tap the card, you get a Bitcoin address.
Right.
Yeah. And obviously we mentioned trade-offs earlier. The whole point of SatsCard, correct me if I'm wrong, but the target market, the audience you're trying to capture is either a group of people with an amount of money where security isn't top of mind, or just getting Bitcoin in the hands of people that have never interacted with the protocol before, right? I mean, this just opens up a horizon that hasn't existed before. Explore that for us a little bit. Like what was the target audience in mind when you created this, and what do you think the implications could be of this new tool?
So, like Opendime, SatsCard sort of concept is, possession is 9/10 of the law kind of deal. So, if you have it with you, is yours, right? Like, because you can spend it. so that's the thing with that card. And the idea is, so like Opendime is like, it's USB-A, so it's going to work forever. It uses one addresses. It's like, it's just very sort of like future proofing kind of device. But, it's still like, in a form factor that like, it's like thick, right? Like, it's not easy to carry around, although it's small, and people put in their keychains and rack them sometimes. It you can't use it with a phone, realistically speaking.
Right.
Although you could you could use an OTG cable with Android and stuff. But anyways, with SatsCard, because it's just like a hotel tapping key kind of thing, right? Like you can put in your wallet, you can put into how do you call those things? Like a thank you card or something, or like a birthday card, because it's flat and you can like ship it across the world kind of thing. It's like a gift card, really. So we were sort of aiming for that gift card or like hotel tapping key kind of like ultra like anyone proof kind of UX, right? Like you tap and it just like does the thing.
Yeah.
It does feel like magic. Is really cool.
I like that. Anyone proof UX. And that's important. For those of us that are spending hours a week studying this and have messed with things and have that motivation, it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of someone that's 82 years old and has no clue what's going on. And we want to make this accessible to that demographic as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And the threshold that we're making accessible to them is also like, because it's much lower, it's okay to make it accessible to them, right? Like it's not like you're trying to make your 80-year-old put his life savings right on a device and then like not spending the afternoon explaining the consequences of that, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you can't understand Coldcard, which is very simple, like you probably shouldn't put your life savings on anything.
Yeah.
Well
very
said.
accurate.
Yeah, there is the onus is on you to do some of the investigation and research, which we're finding ourselves in this position because a lot of our, we're finding that people are approaching our podcast that have, are brand new. So we're getting DMs and comments on Twitter, and then even friends at the firehouse. And there's this, sometimes there can be this initial disposition of like, hey, show me how to do this. And our response is, absolutely, we're here to guide, help, channel resources your direction. But you have to take ownership over this process. Like, you're going to have to know how to do this yourself, because you're going to need to be not only taking ownership personally, but also explaining this to loved ones, setting up a long-term inheritance plan. Cold storage is highly recommended, but if you're not willing to take ownership over that process, then you're just not ready to do it. It's that simple.
This happens a lot, right? People get, they're given, say, Ledger Trezor, right, without any explanation. And then they use those apps that come with those devices that don't give an explanation either, in order to make it sort of like, ultra easy. And then what happens? They get a DM saying, hey, there's a problem with your device. Can you please give me your seed?
Yep.
And then they give them the seed, and then money gone, right? This is why I really dislike this idea of removing all the agency from people, like not teaching them some stuff. If they can't understand the basics, they probably shouldn't be taking their whole life savings on their hands anyways, right? It's like giving somebody a gun, right? Like, it's like, here's a gun.
Yeah, no training.
Do you know how to, like, unload it?
Great analogy. Let's flip over to Canada. What's going on? Because, you've been on our mind a lot in the sense that it's easy for us to sit behind our computer or mobile phone screens here in the United States and lob insults and be concerned and, should demonstrate solidarity. But we're not business owners in a country that's kind of going through some of the pernicious transition that took place here these last few months. Walk us through, both personally and professionally, what it's been like to be on the front lines of this, and where your headspace is now that at least maybe the dust has settled a little bit.
It was interesting to see, like, to go through what happened here in the last sort of month or two, right? So, the country, like, right now is run by Castro's son, and he is he doesn't like to be denied things, right? So people may have different opinions of him, so, or of the stuff that he says. So he decided to go and put martial law because people were honking too loud near Parliament. They they had a jacuzzi and a pig roast, which is also very offensive.
Jacuzzi and
really,
right downtown. Yeah, I know.
It was just awesome. A big party there, right? And it was very tricky. They went and they made so that if you donated to the campaigns, which they made illegal, they made the campaigns illegal first, right? And then they made it so that if you donated to the campaigns,
yeah,
and these things they all got challenged in court, and the problem is at the moment, right? You don't want to be the guy that goes to jail for that week.
Yeah. You don't want to be the guy they make an example out of and just happen to be the poor bastard who takes it on the chin.
Exactly. So anyway, so they started like blocking people's bank accounts if they had any relation to donating like $20 to the campaign.
Is there any precedent there in Canada for something like that having happened before that you know of? No.
I mean, this is a G20 country.
I know, it's crazy.
Like, we're technically more free than America. Like, when you actually look down, like in the freedom index there, with all the things you can and can't do in practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolutely crazy. It's a G20 country. I think it's G7. Like, like, this doesn't happen in countries like this. You have to be like, like some developing country or dictatorship to have stuff like this happen. A lot of people started to withdraw their money from their bank accounts. A lot of people started to wiring their dollars out of the country. And my theory is that he got a call from his MPs saying, "Hey, we're getting called from bankers, and we kind of have a problem here." Right? The president of the Credit Union Association, gave an interview in an article saying that people withdrawing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. So for her to say this publicly, like, like it must have happened in a decent, amount. And then he was also going to have the Emergency Act voted down on that Friday as well, right? So they killed it because, they were done already. But as a Bitcoiner, though, when they announced that, I looked at our bank account. I'm like, the amount of fiat on the bank account that we keep is like, it's pretty much just like small float. And I'm like, you know what? This is just going to like prove my point. And then I'll sue the bank or sue whatever. And, and if they do block my bank account, I'm out.
Yeah. Did you, do you know anyone directly that was affected by this, that had their bank account frozen?
I didn't inquire too much, but I assume that any of the guys that were like a little bit more related to the actual truckers probably did.
Yeah.
I mean, the reporting was everywhere, right? That people were sort of like calling the news agencies to have their story heard because their account got blocked. Man, what a gift. What a gift. We now know how they're going to play this out, right? Like US, Canada, like, like Europe. This is the playbook.
So how did the average Canadian take a look at this? Like, for some of your friends that aren't into Bitcoin or don't have their head in this kind of place that we obviously do, where we're kind of critical of all these types of things and pay a lot of attention to them. How do your normal friends that don't necessarily pay attention to finance and Bitcoin, obviously, how did they view this? Were they skeptical and worried, or are they just not paying attention, not noticing?
COVID in Canada, the last 2 years in Canada was kind of like a great filter. Like we had
everywhere. I think
the COVID crap here, the insanity was a bit higher that you guys had there, right? So that's all to say that, like, I have a lot less friends who are not into Bitcoin after this COVID situation happened. I did a bit of cleanup in the house. It's very difficult to remain connected to people who are for segregation of people. It was difficult, but you just can't do it. I mean, it's like, you're a collaborator. I'm sorry, man, we can't be friends.
In the last 2 years, I think it's become very apparent to people that some people just have slavery in their blood. They just want to be told what to do. They want to be slaves.
Yeah. People don't want freedom, right? People want just a better sell.
Better sell.
So a lot of Canadians, because we have the state broadcaster here, the CBC is, the state broadcaster, right? Like, they get money from the government. So essentially it's the government PR machine. And it's like high production value, right? It's kind of like the BBC. So it's very believable if they say that the science says something. Or that the truckers are racist. Literally Hitler.
Nazis.
And then you have all the other mainstream here was going bankrupt a few years ago. So they all got, $500 million from the government too. So essentially we have all mainstream here, right, as well, by the way, the more righty mainstream as well. So right and left here peddling government propaganda. So a lot of people don't agree with the truckers. Like at least half the country thought that they were actually like Nazi terrorists, like torturing a pig in front of parliament. So that was that's the problem, right? A lot of people thought that the people donating to these campaigns were, Russian actors. No joke. Like, it's the Russians, it's foreign influence. And then, it came out after that 80% of the donations were actually Canadian, right? So it's difficult. People here are in this sort of like trance of, what they call a mass psychosis here for a while now. Trump, orange man, bad. And then like Canadian conservatives, man, bad. And then, wear your mask, take your shots, eat vegetables.
Don't forget your seed oils.
Meat. Yeah. Well, let's not even get into the seed oils with them, right? Yeah, it's fascinating. It's like you have this, humanity has split. You have two tracks, right?
It really has. It's interesting from our vantage point, and we're not going to play like medical epidemiologist here, but we have seen a lot of COVID. I mean, we're medics who dress up as firemen. That's an extreme phrase, but we're dual role. So 70% of our call volume is paramedicine. We've seen a lot of COVID. We've cleared out nursing homes, but we kind of, like most first responders, share this similar perspective of, hey, let's not call it totally phony, but let's also recognize that humanity has totally miscalculated risk. You know, even sitting around, like, we'll talk at the firehouse and be like, you see people at Jewel Osco who are terrified. I mean, beyond terrified grocery shopping of COVID. And it's like, if you're this freaked out, you need to be panic stricken about strokes and heart attacks and diabetes and hyperlipidemia.
Well, that's the hilarious thing. They're 400 pounds on a rascal scooter worried about COVID. Like,
can you imagine this? Like, if people understood the statistics on how cars kill people and hurt people in society, like, we should just cancel all the cars. No more cars for anyone. Because pedestrians and it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah, it's just interesting to watch people, like, when you're on half of our time we each spend on an ambulance. One day we're driving a fire truck, the next day we rotate to an ambulance. It's like, you got all these people terrified of COVID while we're running around town taking, strokes and heart attacks and stuff into it. It's like, it's wild to see how it has divided perspectives. You have this cohort of people that understand, hey, it's not like this is a fake thing, but we're going to keep living our lives. Then this other cohort of people that are willing to, it seems, wear masks forever, even with 3 doses of a vaccine. I mean, it's fascinating to watch
as
behavior.
If the masks work, right? I mean, what people don't understand is that, like, mask fitting is why masks work for professionals. Right? Like, if you're a professional, you have a much better quality mask that's fitted to you twice a year.
We get fit. So like, as medics, we have to go through this breathing test with the N95 on. It records how much air is escaping and all this stuff. And that's the reason we're safe in the back of these ambulances with any respiratory particulates. You know what I mean? TB, COVID, flu, BO. Dude, NVK gets it. Those masks for a paramedic, it's all about BO, man.
That's all I used to take before the last 2 years. That's it. True.
I had to itch my nose the other day, took the thing off. I had a drunk in the back and I almost passed out. It was just absolutely pungent.
Oh, we were on the box that day. This guy was like 4'3", like a troll. And what was he, like, on like a week-long bender when we took him to the hospital?
Josh and I are on different shifts, but I worked overtime the other day, so we actually decided to go on the ambulance together. It was rambunctious. I mean, I would say we literally talked about Bitcoin the entire day, probably in front of patients.
For sure.
No, we're locked up, completely locked up on calls. Highest level of professionalism when Josh and Dan come to pick you up
and drive you to the hospital.
I do think that this is significant, though, in terms of illuminating Bitcoin. I really do. I mean, freedom infringement is often in the early stages insidious, and small moves that then seem to, oh, you guys were all freaking out. They withdrew the executive powers. Everything's good now. Like, that's not how this works. If you look back through history, you see these small cracks that widen over time. And just unilaterally taking executive control over bank accounts without due process and going through the court system is a terrifying precedent. And it does seem that a lot of people, this is clicking for them. You kind of have 3, there's probably more than this, but 3 things come to mind for, like, what makes Bitcoin appealing to you initially. One of the first narratives is just like inflation hedge, protect yourself from debasement. The other one is protect yourself from the fragility in the system. We're super leveraged system built on credit. And then the third that most Bitcoiners are aware of is this censorship resistant component. But it really feels like in a lot of ways that's gone mainstream recently, both at the individual level with what we've seen in Canada, and then even up to the sovereign nation state level. We said this with Pomp last week. We were like, we're no fan of Putin here, but, like, freezing FX reserves is clearly, it's clearly going to push sovereign nation states that aren't in the good graces of the West into a different settlement layer. So All I'm saying is it seems like Bitcoin there's now this third piece that's gone really mainstream, and censorship resistance is no longer just a Bitcoin Twitter thing. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about it that weren't before.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, right? The Trudeau thing was a gift, right? We would not have known how far they would go in regards to like so little, right? Like you donated to a trucker, we don't like it, we can't handle it, we're freaking out, so we're gonna just cancel your accounts, right? And they want to keep the law in place for blocking financial accounts without due process, based on bullshit, right? And they removed the liability from the banks.
Right.
So they indemnify them, so you can't sue the bank. So that's why the banks complied so easy, right? Because banks wouldn't comply so easy if you can sue them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're taking all the risk out for them.
Yeah. So now with this world thing going on right now with the I stand with Ukraine, is it's insanity, right? I mean, like we're like blocking Russians. We have decades of understanding that sanctions don't work. It just punish the people. I mean, look at Cuba. They haven't given up,
Right.
right? They're just poor and miserable, but they haven't given up. The bad guys in power still get their nice stuff from Lululemon. Right? Putin can still get Lululemon pants. He just send somebody to buy it. Yeah, like now the Netflix is not in Russia anymore. Like, what are they gonna do? Oh my god.
Yeah, they're in trouble
This
without some Netflix.
Shit is just out of control.
It is insane to think that they didn't think ahead on this at all, to just go full frontal with these massive limits on what Russian people can do and like limiting financial transactions. They've got to understand, or they had to have thought at least a little bit ahead and thought, we are stepping on our own dick in a major way here. When we bifurcate the entire financial world from East and West, like they're not going to just not trade anymore. This is going to just cause this bifurcation that's going to shoot us right in our own foot. So we are basically putting dollar hegemony at total risk to gain, I mean, what isn't seeming to be much in return. This geopolitical game of chicken that we're playing with finances is not going to be beneficial to the West, in my opinion, especially not in the longer term. This is basically our largest export in the U.S. is dollars, and we're gonna.
No, but hang on a second. Personally, I think this, the guy. There's smart people inside, like deep inside government, right?
I hope so.
And I mean, like, look what they did with 2008, right? I mean, they did sell our children's future, but they did find soft landing, right?
Yeah.
And soft landing gets you reelected. Remember, like this has nothing to do with us having a prosperity as a society. It's about them getting reelected.
Incentives.
That's why I don't believe in conspiracies. It's just too simple. So I really think that they hinted at the world the last sort of like few years, saying, "Hey, get off the dollar. Get off the dollar. We're gonna unwind this shit. Get off the dollar." Right? Because U.S. got to a point now where you can't, like, I mean, even if you raise like the interest rate by like 50%, you'd still not do a dent in the foreign debt, right? Yeah. So what they did was like, okay, since we can't go that route, we're gonna just unwind the rest of the world off of it, right? By hinting things so that everybody can go posture, you can go zipping there. Oh, look, fuck you, America. We're not gonna use the dollar anymore. And then Russia can go and say, fuck you, America. We're not gonna use the dollar anymore. And then America can say, like, fuck you, rest of the world. You can't have the dollar anymore, right? Like, and everybody gets to sort of score some points locally, get reelected, and we can all move on from the petrodollar. Like, that to me is exactly what happened, because you don't get to be Saudi Arabia and just go on a news thing and say, hey, we are exploring the idea of the yuan for oil.
Right.
I mean,
preposterous.
If America, if America had if this was not already sanctioned with the U.S. to say, I mean, like, Saudi Arabia, by the way, gets all their guns from America. They would just be bombed, and that's it, and it's over. Right? Like, I mean, we know how this happened, right? Like Saddam was trying to get off the dollar. And now it's okay to get
Gaddafi.
off the dollar. He was just early.
I think Gaddafi was
Too
the
early.
last one too. They deep sixed after he decided he was going to take the euro or something instead of dollars. But
you must be pro Gaddafi, man.
yeah, I really was a fan. I mean, I followed it. I read his blog. I really kept in touch. Good guy overall.
Great podcast.
Real regular guy.
That's right. Bomb to Gaddafi, I think was the name of the pod.
What you were saying a second ago, we talk in Bitcoin a lot about what's your time preference. And it's very clear that even up to the, governments and nation states, there's high time preference, man. The political system is set up that way. And then fiat throws gasoline on the fire. And it does allow you to engineer soft landings that kick the can down the road.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to print this one till they're going to print all the way, man. All the way.
They have to.
This one is going to be like the total like capitulation, right? So they're just going to go for it. And there really is no alternative, right? It's like we're going to have essentially stagflation now for like it's going to be 20 years, man, 30 years of stagflation.
How do you see this thing transitioning in the short to midterm? It doesn't make sense. I think we'd all agree Bitcoin is way too small yet for this to be a transition point for it. Do you think that we see something more of a commodity, gold potentially being a transition into a more commodity-backed currency system?
No. It's a big no there.
Well, I guess what is going to give people the trust? How are they going to trust it?
The bully in the world that has the most amount of guns, right? So like the big arms in the world, right? America have very little gold relative. So you don't want to be on the other side of that trade, right? Because they're going to strong arm the rest of the world to push gold down, right? They're going to make sure that gold is not the next thing. Because if it was the next thing, they'd be short gold. So, I mean, and China does not exist without U.S. consumers. They try to push internal economy there to have sort of like a more circular thing going, and it does. But it's not even like remotely comparable, right? I mean, they sell everything and America, press Amazon buy, right? Like you can't, and all that shit comes from China, like everything. Right, like there's even all the stuff that's made in America. You know what? It isn't. Like all the parts and all the chemicals that are used for it, everything comes from China, right? So like China is like almost like a client state of America. So there really is no way around that. And so everybody can posture all they want. You can't bring manufacture to U.S. It's not going to happen. Not in the way that people think. Because you can't do that stuff there. There's just not enough people, not enough engineers, not enough materials. It's too much regulation, all the good stuff, right? And then China cannot exist without that market. And Russia is just a confused thing there on the top, right? They export 60% of the ammonium nitrate of the world, so you can't plant stuff without it. So, we're just all connected now. We're going to have to just like learn how to have, all the drunk uncles on Christmas, and just deal with it.
Yeah.
So you kind of envision this just being this fiat fiasco until it's not, and the orange coin moves its way in. That's sort of the way you envision it, or?
It's hard to say. So actually, like the way I like to see it is like you're going to have two tracks, okay? Because the economy is stagflation is not pretty. Like for middle class and like poor people, it's like devastating, right?
Absolutely.
So what they're going to have to do is essentially like print and give money, right? And they're going to do that through programs, through credits, to whatever. And what we're going to have is like essentially like some form of CBDC that's not going to be forced on everybody. It's going to be kind of like food stamps, right? But it's going to be an app, and you're going to have like your essentially like your cucked dollars in there, right? And they're gonna say you can only use it for this kind of stuff. It's only lettuce for you, right? Only lentils, and no dog chemotherapy, right? As the Bloomberg puts it. Like if you make less than $300,000 a year, but we're gonna feel it, right? Like we're gonna print and we're gonna give you money so that you can survive on your Soylent Green, right?
Yeah.
and you're still gonna have the normal dollar, which is still the best shitcoin in the world, right? And it's gonna be normal. Like you're still gonna do trade internationally. Nothing's gonna change on that. I think Europe is gonna take a massive hit, because Europe is like half U.S. like treasuries and stuff, so like they're screwed. And we're just gonna have this like weird sort of mix of things, and it's gonna flare up here and there, and they're gonna sort of manage it and print more, and here's some more for the next 20, 30 years until everybody decides to either go on Bitcoin or there's something else. Because there's no alternative. There really isn't. Like gold is not it.
I agree. I think that's one of the most compelling realizations that a lot of Bitcoiners make is you understand the potential significance, and then you go trying to figure out how it's not going to play out this way. And you find no substitute to rectify problems that are going to be exacerbated as the years go on. I mean, there's nothing else out there that's positioned to take these issues on, and there's no signs of it stopping when you start putting the game theoretic pieces together.
Yeah. It's it's a monumental macaroni code style thing, and it's like a monumental amount of money that is like off, like that's like misallocated, right? It's gonna take a minimum of a generation to clear this stuff out. But remember, these morons still want to like do more bad shit, right? So it's not like we're just gonna like they're gonna be like, hey, you know what? I think we're gonna just do good from now. So we're gonna try to do the best we can to unwind this without completely destroying society. No, they're gonna be like, okay, cool. So we want to unwind, still get elected, but what can we get out of this, right?
Yeah. These soft landings are not going to be in play.
Yeah.
I sent this tweet out. I just pulled it up. It was a couple days ago. I said, when economic systems aren't allowed to deleverage, leverage increases. That is the essence of fiat central banking and the glue that holds our fragile economic system together. Bitcoin may not be so benevolent short term, but long term it will enable genuine growth. But this thing is going to be that, asshole disciplinarian mom that turns you into a, ethical, fine young man. It's going to be like Josh's mom. Josh was a total asshole tyrant as a little kid.
That was such a good kid.
His mom spanked him.
Such a good kid.
Disciplined him, and he turned into the fine gentleman that he is today.
Took a lot of beatings.
Your tweet was really put simply by Max Kaiser. You can't taper a Ponzi.
Yeah.
It really is that, right? And people are gonna have to learn. People are gonna have to learn how to live within their means. People are gonna have to learn how to not have the latest iPhone. It still shocks me, right? Like I go back to Brazil to visit, and I look at like people who like clearly like don't have money, right? With like an iPhone in their hands. I'm like, how is this even economically possible, right? Like, and so priorities matter, right? And hopefully we move into a better set of time preferences and priorities.
Amen.
NVK, in your view, what do you think needs the most development in Bitcoin? What are we not working on that we should be?
I think Bitcoin is perfect. I mean, we could remove half the stuff we have there and it's still amazing. Like, honestly, like there's this, I find it's like a boredom fallacy that we have, in like Bitcoin Twitter and all this stuff. It's like, people are like, there isn't enough stuff happening. There's not enough money for Bitcoin companies. There's not this, it's not true. There is enough of everything. And the market is like met, right? Like the demand is met. It's just that people just need to understand, like, it takes time to change a monetary system. And as much fun as it is to like, feed chickens with lightning, that's not like.
Wait, what? Let's go into that for a second.
There is a website you can feed chickens with lightning.
I did not
remotely.
I need to check this out.
Cool,
it's top of priority as soon as we get
We're
off
gonna link this down below.
But like Lightning is gonna be custodial. It's gonna be sort of like a replacement for Visa and all this entities like hub spoke model. It's fantastic technology, but it's not, I believe, what people think it is. And then like, there is enough money for devs. If there wasn't, they wouldn't be devs. There is a lot of devs. There's like thousands of people working on Bitcoin. And it's a really awesome. It really is.
It is awesome. I want to pull on that lightning thread a little bit. I think that's interesting. And just from the couple sentences you said there a second ago, I think I agree. I think a lot of lightning liquidity is going to be just housed in companies that are good at managing it. Is that sort of where you were going with that? Walk us through the future you envision for lightning.
No, that's just the model, right? I mean, like, you need liquidity, you need this. It's a very complex network that needs state, right? So it needs to be stateful. It needs to be talking to the network as well. There's proposals to sort of figure out sort of other sort of trade-offs, but realistically speaking, it's like you have this amazing system that like replaces Visa, right? Where you have a card, or in this case an app, right, that is linked to this entity. It's going to provide you a payment rails that is much better than anything else, right? And you're going to have competition on this space. So you're going to have like, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, right? So like you're going to have like Lightning Labs, you're going to have Spiral, Blocks, whatever, and you're going to have Blockstream, and you're going to have this and that. They're all going to be semi sort of centralized in a way, but the rails talk to each other, right? So you're going to be able to interop, and you're going to be able to run your node and try to do the thing yourself too, which is fantastic, and many people will, but that doesn't scale to society, right? You're going to have this interesting thing. And then if you want through uncensorable, through this, through that, base layer.
Yeah, we've messed with, because we're on podcast 2.0 apps and we have nodes, and we've messed with Lightning liquidity some. And it's really cool. I mean, you understand how the basics of how Lightning works and how it connects to the base chain and all this stuff. But we were messing with this 8 months ago, 10 months ago. And we had some interchanges where Josh and I were like, this is not something I see the average person doing.
No, like balancing liquidity channels and stuff like that is still
and also
difficult.
Like if you have the liquidity for something like that yourself, you might use a different solution, right? And what I'm hoping for is more L2 solutions that are incompatible. Right? I want more ideas that have different sets of trade-offs. They're trying different things, and don't try to interop. Not everything needs to interop. We have Bitcoin. Right? I mean, for all I care, not even the Lightning implementations need to interop. It'd be fantastic if, like, Lightning Labs go one direction, Blockstream goes another. Maybe some parts of their system do. Maybe none of it interrupts, and it's okay.
Let the market decide.
Options.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really, really hard to build networks with the same exact sets of rules for different entities with different priorities, right? That almost like hinders development. We have Bitcoin for that.
What are some of the most ingenious, totally changing the subject here, ingenious ways people have hidden private keys that you know of? Or because I know you can and again, like, we're not saying you should get it over your skis and do something to lose your money here, but I know there's really cool ways you can hide these in like pictures, JPEGs. Yeah. For people that watching, he just did the old finger inside the rectum trick on video for us. So put it up your ass,
not
please.
the actual one, the fake one.
Yeah, the fake one. He didn't actually put his finger in his ass on video.
Involved.
Yeah.
No rectums were harmed in this video.
We don't harm them, do we, Dan?
Like, people get creative, right?
No.
They remember their 12 words. They will write them on the Bible. They will, like, put them in seed plates and bury them. People put them in pictures. It really is sort of like all over the place, right? I mean, it's data, and it's only very little data, so it's so easy to sort of like hide it. Yeah,
it's going to be a great Easter egg hunt when I pass away for somebody.
It's going to be, if you go before me, Josh, guess where your wife's coming? My house, and I'm going to have to fucking
You're going to have to follow the
so.
rabbit trail.
Yeah. Oh man, and you guys joke, but like, we get sometimes emails about this stuff. It's like, my very smart programmer husband died, and he left me this very complicated thing, and it's unredeemable. Sorry.
Sucks.
Yeah, we are constantly barking on here about inheritance planning. as
it
fun as all
simple.
this stuff is, I think you've used the phrase before, forward error correction.
Yeah.
I love that phrase, and that should be done for a company like yours, but also for an individual. Make sure this is squared away. Have no doubt that if you get hit driving to work tomorrow, if you and your wife get hit driving on your next vacation, go through the scenarios and make sure that the most pristine asset of the last 1,000 years is safe and secure.
Yeah, it really is like, I keep on harping on this like all the time. It's like most people will screw themselves, not get robbed, right? So like, just seed plate metal backup in the house. So if the house burns, at least you have a chance, right? Don't make some complicated setup unless you're really knowledgeable and you know how to like properly leave instructions, right?
Yeah, there's a really cool little jig that you can 3D print. For anyone listening that doesn't want to spend $100 on some of these Bill Fodl products, you can actually take washers, and with this little jig, you can just stamp in your seed words onto the washers, put them on a bolt, and that's like a $5, stainless steel hardware wallet keeper for you that will survive a house burning down or a flood. And it's cheap, super cheap.
Yeah, make sure to number those washers.
Yes, good point.
Pro tip. Let's end with this one. This was a question that we got on Twitter. Someone was asking about your Twitter handle and then your banner. First of all, deterministic optimism. Hit us with what that means, and then what is the image? That's the one I'm curious about. What is the significance of the image on your Twitter?
So deterministic, like Bitcoin is deterministic, right? Is elliptical curve cryptography, and it also has deterministic distribution, right? So fixed inflation on a schedule. And I think being a Bitcoiner, you can't really escape the determinism. It's just like, if it follows the Bitcoin math, either wins or goes to zero. So like, we have this extremely deterministic sort of means of understanding and pricing the future. And that makes me optimist. Like it's like we have a thing that like we have a lifeboat, right? It's and it's been winning. Like it's winning.
Sure is.
This magic internet money, it's like $40,000 now per unit, right? I mean, people used to say moon was like $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Like,
if you've been in this long enough.
I mean, what was you got in 2012?
No, I'm not gonna dox myself.
You got it was 2019, wasn't it? Yeah, never mind.
But you've been around long. I got it in 1971. When Satoshi released the paper via fax, but not a lot of people got it. So definitely 1971.
You've definitely been around to see this, to be more floored by 40 grand than most, though. I mean, like, so our touch point, let's say Josh and I got rolling on this when it was, it's 3, 4, 5 grand. 40 looks crazy, but if you've been around and developing like you have, it is truly remarkable the hurdles that this has jumped over, and just the fact that it's still here. I mean, I'm sure in your early days this was just a pie in the sky cool idea, and here we sit, 10 years later, and it's being talked about on CNBC every other day, and the White House is releasing statements about it. I mean, it's pinch yourself type stuff.
The idea that Bitcoin was going to work is like pretty amazing. Like, like we used to call this an experiment, right? Like it was a word that we all used for a long time to make sure that people understood not to like put their life savings on it, right? Because it could go away. Back in the day, you just killed enough people, like Bitcoin would disappear. It's not possible anymore. I mean, I don't believe it's realistically possible to kill Bitcoin. Not in any way that does not hurt the state or like either like, saving face or just like you just can't go, you can't coordinate killing all the Bitcoiners in the world at the same time, right? Like Bitcoin will never go to zero because there's enough of us that would just buy every single one of them just to put in a picture frame. So it's just an interesting thing. Like, I just don't believe it's practical to kill it. And imagine like a major G7 country trying to kill Bitcoin and not achieving it. what it would look like, you would make Bitcoin quadruple moon that week. Right?
It would melt faces. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, oh look, America tried to kill Bitcoin and they can't. Oh.
Even these
Sphincter
hyperinflated
titans.
$100 trillion bills are actually, this thing's worth $400 right now. This hyperinflated currency is gaining value on the dollar over the last 10 years aggressively. I think I bought this thing for $5. No kidding. 10 years ago, that thing was $5.
That's amazing.
Should have put all my money in $100 trillion Zimbabwe bills.
Yeah. It's, yeah. How funny is that, right?
Things are going parabolic. NVK, thanks for your time. Really enjoyed this one. Give our audience a handoff to, we covered it, but Coinkite and where they can interact with you.
Yeah, just Twitter at NVK and, check out our products, buy our stuff. And it's at coinkite.com. And thanks for having me, guys. This usual fun.
Thanks for coming.
Talking to two guys who actually go in the box of an ambulance and understand.
That is the slang we have for it. We call it the box.
I'm gonna start calling it the box.
Or the blood bucket. That's another phrase.
The blood bucket. I like that one even better.
We're gonna keep an eye out on Coinkite's store for that little device that you place the Opendime inside for your rectum. We'll keep a lookout for that. Hopefully our discount code works for that as well.
I am certain somebody out there can send you a mold.
Awesome.
Yeah, 3D print that thing.
I'll have to do a fine print. I don't want any sharp edges on that guy.
Spent like 13 minutes on this episode talking about keisters.
Well, I mean, you guys work on the box on the back, man. Like, you guys seen things.
Yeah, we've seen some stuff.
We've seen some keisters, man. I can tell you that. Not something you want to see, and you can't unsee.
Yes.
Thanks, NVK. Have a great rest of your day, man.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for listening into the show. If you enjoyed this discussion, be sure to like or subscribe on whatever app you're using for podcasts or on YouTube. And if you have an extra minute, go ahead and leave us a review. We are also active on Twitter at blue_collarbtc, and our email address is bluecollarbitcoinpodcast@gmail.com. We invite questions, comments, or inquiries of any kind. We look forward to you joining us again on the BCB Podcast.